Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pharmaceutical Soccer. So happy to be here. It just feels so much better to be here when we're not talking about Nashville soccer specifically over the weekend's performances because there wasn't any. It was an international break, but of course I'm here with Valer Shabilla and back from his two week hiatus, the one and only Clay Trainum. Clay, it's great for you to be here, back from the Phoenix, Arizona area. How was your time?
Well, I was barely in Phoenix. So it was I'm just gonna one up Valaire on any weekend update he's given since Belize. But so
Fair enough.
we went to the Petrified Forest, we went to Montezuma Castle, we went to Sunset Crater, we went to the Grand Canyon, we went to Tombstone. I mean, it was all up and down the state, Tucson, all the way up to like Holbrook and Tucson in northern Arizona. So it was great. Not my first time in Tucson. As longtime listeners of this podcast will know, I've been to Tucson before for the same family reasons, but my first time at the Grand Canyon, which was a blast. So, oh, Sedona. Sedona rules. If anybody ever feels like going to Sedona, it's a weird place. It's a strange place. They're into their crystals. CJ Sapong would love Sedona, but it's a pretty wild place.
There's one thing that Valaire has on his Belize trip that you don't have on your trip, though. Like, there's no way to say, wow, that trip was unzona. It's not like Belize where you could say, wow, that trip was unbelievable. You know, you don't
Yeah,
have that.
yeah, I'm not really gonna acknowledge that other than to saying shout out to the last time I went to Tucson. This is a real callback. I went to go see an FC Tucson match, RIP. And it was the first game for NSC uh, at that point, Loney, Ramon Howell, and it shocked him that I was there. And so we drove by where FC Tucson used to play, and I was like, "Oh, I remember watching that game with the FC Tucson supporters group, which was called the Cactus Pricks, which is a great name."
That is a
And
great name.
so I hope pro soccer goes back to Tucson at some point. But I don't know that you should be playing soccer in 120-degree weather. So, we'll see what happens there down the line.
Valaire, what was your weekend like?
I didn't watch any soccer. It was weird. I don't remember the last time I didn't watch the soccer over the weekend. Iraq played, but it played on Thursday, so didn't really watch anything else other than that. Watched little highlights here and there, but didn't watch a single game. So that was really interesting. I unfortunately did watch the Titans game, which I shouldn't have because that was depressing. Um, Yeah, I mean it was a good weekend. I had a little just I guess good is a strong word. It was an average weekend. Not a whole lot happened, and I'm okay with it.
This was my first. I want to point this out because this is crazy. So Arizona doesn't observe daylight savings time. So essentially, this time of year, they're on Pacific time. And let me tell you, college football starting at 9 a.m. is wonderful for someone who wakes up early. So, shout out to the Pacific time zone for letting me roll out of bed and immediately watch college football.
One more thing. I did participate and help run the fifth annual Kick in the 615 foot golf tournament, and it was another successful year. Thank you for everybody who came out to play and who came out to sponsor or whatever you did. We appreciate all the help. We had a good amount of folks turn out, and we need more folks to turn out. So chaos615.org at kicking the 615.
I did nothing over the weekend. I did watch some U.S. soccer, so I have some thoughts on that we'll talk about here probably in a little bit. But that was, I don't know, I haven't really like taken the time to sit and watch a U.S. men's national team match in a little bit, so it was fun to kind of get back into that mode in some way, shape, or form. But other than that, it was a weird sports weekend. Like it was just there wasn't a ton. I mean, even though there was a ton going on, it just didn't feel like there was a ton going on. I don't know, locally or like just normal interests. Like I don't know, the Preds started and they lost to my Detroit Red Wings, so that was a good time. Um,
Well,
yeah,
before that, they also lost before that. So that was
yeah, they
their
lost.
second game of losing.
Yes.
Yeah. They They lost at home to Dallas. Dallas, yes. I watched a little bit of that game actually. Yeah. So you guys want to do a Preds thing here? Like what we're doing?
This is probably the most entertaining weekend update we've ever put out there. I'm not gonna lie. Like,
Clay had the best one, clearly. And then like
absolutely,
you and
yeah.
I are just like, oh yeah, we did a thing, I guess.
Yeah. We normally don't have competitions on our weekends, but if we did, Clay would probably win. But Clay also was gone for 2 weeks, so
Right. You know how like when a player rests, like it's like, oh, there's international duty, like they're fatigued, so they're gonna like rest up and they're gonna come back stronger. That's Clay. He came in so strong because of the rest he had the 2 weeks prior.
I don't know that you could call going to 90 to 95-degree weather, hiking, and going up mountains and all that stuff very restful.
No, that's the product of after the rest because you
Oh,
didn't do the show. You see, like
gotcha.
you had your best
Oh,
performance
and because I
then.
missed it out last week and it may not last, the Indiana Hoosiers are still undefeated. So I just want to make sure that people still know that. So
That's
shout out
volleyball.
to the Indiana Hoosiers.
it is volleyball. That is
Volleyball,
correct.
No, 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 football.
football. Oh, okay.
Jack May
Okay, so next up, what do we
Jack
have?
Mayer's alma mater, baby, Indiana University. Undefeated. Look, we're going to tie it back to NSC in some way, shape, or form, just like we're going to tie the end of year awards into anything NSC related. Actually, no, I can't do that. It was really funny. I don't know. It's been with the end of the MLS season coming on Saturday. I don't, we should have done a poll, a Monday poll on if you plan on watching Nashville SC on Saturday for decision day, because it is decision day coming up on Saturday. But it is time to start submitting the MLS year-end awards. And I know Valair actually does get an official submission for the MLS year-end awards, which is a lot of fun. Shout out to Valair for that. It was really funny reading Matthew Doyle's. He picked a best 11 and then picked a second best 11 and a third best 11 and a fourth best 11 and a fifth best 11, and none of those included one single Nashville soccer player. I don't know how far down the list he could have gone, where he would then eventually have to pick one, but it was just extremely unfortunate to see that list specifically put out there. But Valair, do you kind of want to go through? I think you would kind of be the best one to lead the conversation since you officially get to pick your MLS year-end award recipients. So what did you go with?
Yeah, so I submitted this morning actually, and it wasn't easy. This is only the second year I've done this, so there are some categories that I think are just like pretty clear, and others that just I don't know. You can make an argument either way. And one thing I'll say before we go into this is that this is all subjective. None of this is meant to be like this is not like the golden boot, right? It's like this player scored the most goals, they win the golden boot. It's not like that. This is all subjective. It's about how much the player impacted their team, how much the player impacted the league. So there are the regular sort of awards you get for goalkeeper, defender, MVP, all that. But there's also the impact award or the I think community impact award, which I do want to touch on before getting into like the actual picks, because I believe, not I believe, Taylor Washington of Nashville SC, that was Nashville SC's only submission to the year end awards, which was Taylor Washington for the impact award. So other than that, they didn't submit anybody else, which I truly appreciate because some of these terrible teams are still submitting names because they can, and I don't know why MLS allows them to. Like, you know, you have San Jose, they put out like 7, 8 nominations, and it's like, what is the point of this? They're not going to win. They shouldn't even be nominated. It just makes it more convoluted for an award. So shout out Taylor Washington because of his work with the community for being nominated for Nashville SC for the community award. I think he has been nominated every single year of MLS existence. I'm not sure about 2020, but I'm pretty sure onward he's been the nomination for that. So with this very long intro, I will go into my actual picks, and I would like to hear what you guys think. and whether or not you guys agree with me, because I don't know, it's a weird topic. So in terms of the comeback player of the year, I went with Robin Ludd on Minnesota United. We don't have to spend time on all of these awards, but I think the big two we'll talk about a little bit more. So Robin Ludd from Minnesota United, he came back. I think he has like 15 assists, is insane. I think like few games into the last season, he hurt himself and season-ending injury. Kalina, in terms of goalkeeper of the year, Charlotte has been just amazing and defensively, and a lot of it has to do with the defense. But it's that old Joe Willis thing, right? It's like Joe Willis never got his actual praise because of his defenders. Speaking of defenders, Morera was my pick for defender of the year. He's kind of like a right back, center back hybrid for Columbus Crew, who have been great this year, obviously. Leading into Diego Luna for RSL for young player of the year, was between him and Diego Gomez of Miami. I'm not really, I could go either way, but I went with Luna just because I think RSL needs him more than Miami needs Gomez. Newcomer
Luna's
of the
got better
year.
stats too.
And he's got better. Yeah, he played more as well. That was my one thing with Gomez, is that he ended up playing like 15, 16 games, I think. So I wasn't really that drawn to him. Newcomer of the year, Gabriel Peck of the LA Galaxy. Absolutely incredible year. If somebody picked Luis Suarez, I'm not going to be mad at them, but I think this is a clear Gabriel Peck award to
Yeah,
me.
Suarez gets the benefit of playing with a loaded team.
Right.
Yeah.
And like just the amount of goal contributions in terms of being split between assists and goals, Gabriel Peck just has that. And then
We've come to expect that from like big players in MLS, but that's a fairly new thing in MLS. People getting double
mhm.
digits in both. Like that's not something that used to be a rare thing, and now we see it every year, which is pretty wild.
Well, and I think for somebody who is somewhat unknown, I mean, I know he came in with a huge price tag, but he's not the Suarez. He's not even a like a I don't know, Lucho Acosta type in terms of popularity. You know what I mean? And he was able to have a pretty big impact. And then the big two, which I will let you guys say your piece as well on it. But coach of the year, I went with Tata Martino, being able to win the Supporter Shield,
That was the most
generally.
disgusting thing I've ever seen in my entire life, but I get
Um,
it.
who would you vote for?
I mean,
Nancy.
no,
That's fair.
I would vote Nancy.
Yeah.
I just
I
like
I think that I think that the argument for Tata Martino boils down to Martino only really had. I think losing Messi and still being able to win out is and win the supporter shield is a pretty impressive feat. And I think if
Yeah.
you base it only on MLS accomplishments, it has to be Martino. But I think that this is one of those situations that's like the opposite of like the way I would think the MVP would go, where it's like, well, clearly the best coach is Wilfred Nancy. He's the best coach. Did he have the best MLS season more than Tata Martino? Maybe not, but Wilfred Nancy's the best coach.
I agree with that. But in bold letters in my email inbox, it said only consider MLS
Right.
performances. So I
Yeah.
can't just go out and say, well, Nancy had the final of the Champions League, which is fair. Like, I think Nancy is a great coach and the best coach in MLS. Exactly like Clay said. I just don't think he should win MLS Coach of the Year this year because Tata Martino was able to take draft picks, put them as center backs, even though they're like, right wingers or whatever, and still win the supporter shield. So like I think that is a good accomplishment and enough to win. And they're probably gonna break the point record as well. And I know they have Messi. I understand that. I know they have Suarez, but like that doesn't mean that it's just comes easy. Like we've seen super teams fail before. So that's
uh
my argument.
I do agree with you as I was trying to look up the nominations for these that this is absolutely insane that
Isn't
like
it crazy?
that Ian
Like,
Russell from San Jose is on the
yes,
best coach of the
the
year
intro.
nomination
They
list.
haven't even given him the job, and he was nominated for Coach of the Year. Like, who? Why?
Like, why would
Why?
anybody nominate Brian Schmetzer for this year? Like, there's no way, shape, or form that that should be anywhere in existence.
That makes a lot more sense than like half of the nominations, just simply because like Seattle's up there. But also, yes, I agree. But I think MLS should just make so. I will say there are requirements on certain things. So like MVP has to play 1,000 minutes. I think Young Player of the Year has to play like 500 minutes or something like those. So there are requirements on certain awards, but not all of them. And to me, it's just like, let's make more requirements, or let's just tell teams, no, like, F off. Like, no, like, you're not going to win him. Like, Joseph
Now,
Martinez is not going to win MVP, but Montreal nominated him for MVP.
this is where it's funny. So when I worked in college sports, this is what my job was putting together these packages for conference player of the year. And let me tell you, there's nothing weirder than putting a submission for conference player of the year for a 3-28 women's basketball team, which I had to do at one point in my career. So sometimes these decisions are made on ridiculous levels because you have an option to put somebody up, so you do it. I do appreciate teams that can understand how ridiculous that looks.
I think that's the biggest win in Nashville SC season, honestly, for me personally, is that they didn't bother putting out random players who have no business being in those awards. And they put out Taylor Washington. I really appreciate that. Other than that, no one from NSC deserves to be in any of these categories. And I don't think anybody disagrees with me.
Agreed. All right. And then what was the other one that you did put out there, Valer?
Obviously, the MVP award, which is the big one. And I will tell you, I had Messi written down. And with and with Messi written down, I almost hit submit. So I had Wilfred Nancy, Coach of the Year, Messi MVP, and I think I can make a pretty good argument for Messi because the only argument against Messi is that he didn't play as many minutes. And that's that. That's the only argument. But if we're talking about, I'm a literal person, and most valuable to me means the most valuable, not the best. And however, with all that said, I did end up voting for Cucho because I changed my mind in the last minute, and I don't know if I'm going to regret that.
So I had mentioned it in the previous point. If you're going, like, I think it's ideologically inconsistent. If you have Messi, then you should have Nancy. Like, Messi's clearly the best player in the league. Nancy's, I think, pretty clearly the best manager in the league. But neither of their contributions during the league season necessarily equate to being the best. So it kind of, if you do one, you have to do the other to be ideologically consistent. So I understand why you would go, all right, I'm going Cucho and I'm going Tata, which I think on the basis of the season is the right decision.
Right.
I think you can make an argument for a number of guys. I think if you take the Messi, I think Messi's obviously going to win this. Like, he's going to win it. I think that there's so many voters that are just going to put his name because he's Messi. He deserves it, but I mean, there's just so many voters that are going to put his name because he's Messi. So I think it's pretty clear that he's going to win it. But if you take him out, the MVP race would actually be pretty insane. Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of guys with good numbers, like Peck, like Boanga, like Evander, like even a guy like Benteke who's going to win the Golden Boot. Like, these are like guys who all would have an argument in any other year to be MVP. So it's a pretty crazy MVP race compared to most years where you kind of figure it out early on. I think we figured out it was Messi early on, but like, if you remove him from the equation, it would be a very interesting MVP race.
Yeah, I think the Evander one for me is the one dark horse shot out that I'm like, if Messi wasn't on the list, I do feel like Evander probably, when it comes to valuable player in in league or team specifically, Evander took Portland way farther than Portland was ever expected to be this season.
That's not true though, because like they are literally just like they just got out of the playing spots. That's not very far. Like without Evander, okay, they would have finished 12. Wow, he took him from
For
12 to
sure.
9.
If Nassau didn't
Amazing.
have Hani the year that Hani won MVP, we would have finished 12th. Like, and you're telling me that
That's the difference. That's the difference. Hani made Nashville SC not finish 12 and finish 6th or 7th.
right,
Not 9.
you're literally giving me my point. You're saying that Evander also, if it wasn't for Evander, they would not have finished.
Yeah, but I'm talking about 2 or 3 spots. That's my point. Hani moved Nashville like 6 spots in the table. You see what the difference? Like Hani is literally double the impact of Evander. Because if you look at Evander, he did assist those goals, but others had to score them as well. Hani had CJ Sapong who scored 12 goals the first half and then never scored again. Like,
You guys are
it's not
missing out
even
on a very important point here, and that is Phil Neville still has a job, which I think people would have been shocked at if he made it to the end of the season on the basis of his previous work in this league. and that it's largely because of guys like Evander.
I will
So
say they are having a historically great season. They are the first time, for the first time in MLS history, there are three players with 15 plus goals from the same team. So like they are doing something right going forward. Now their defense is absolutely awful, but in terms of Phil Neville, I think he's going to see the light of the day simply because he has this offense playing like the best offense in MLS. But he's going to get the chance to at least figure out the defense. I guess my point.
yeah, no, I just was because I think he would have been odds-on favorite to not make it to the end of the season,
Oh yeah,
along
for
with Jerry
sure.
Smith, who didn't, of course, when the season started. So
So who would
I
you
think it's
pick?
going to
Who
be
would you pick
messy.
for
It's going to be
MVP?
messy. I don't really have an argument. I think that the coach of the year should be Nancy. So along the same lines, I think Messi wins it. If Messi doesn't get hurt, he sets all kinds of records this year.
That's fair. Steven?
I'd pick Cucho mainly because I refuse to pick Messi. So I understand
Okay.
that might be the best, and I understand I am biased, but I'd pick Cucho.
Okay, so here's one more question then. Um, we don't have to go through every single award, but is there anybody from those awards that you want to make an argument for, like who isn't maybe getting noticed as much, or like first 11 shot that somebody's? Do you have a take you want to give here?
I don't.
I mean, the only real thing, as much as I hate to do it, I think you can make a pretty valid argument for Miles Robinson at
That's fair.
SC, especially with how much of a mess there have been at times on the back line. I think that he's he's sort of made them continue to be like one of the best teams in the league by, being arguably the best defender in the league. So I think you can make an argument for him. But
How in the world does San Jose have two people nominated for Defender of the Year? How is that possible? How is that allowed?
um, I don't know,
Yeah,
maybe Lewis Morgan for comeback, but
yeah.
I don't necessarily know where you'd go with it, where you go different with any of your picks. I think I agree with all your picks, other than the big ones.
Yeah. And then I will say on one thing I kind of struggled with a little bit. I think for Seattle, like Jackson Reagan and Yamar, both incredible center backs. I think I do put Reagan ahead of him, and I did put Reagan in my starting 11. But Seattle has low key been under the radar a little bit because they have the best defense in the league in terms of goal conceded. Now, Charlotte is right there next to them, but I think their season went a little unnoticed because they're Seattle and we're kind of used to them being good, but really good defensively. And Jordan Morris is low key having like one of the best seasons out there since moving to center forward. So I would watch out for them in the playoffs. I still think the Galaxy, as good as they are offensively, I think going back, they're kind of a little suspect, and I think the best team coming out of the West is LAFC anyway. But anyway, we'll wrap it up here. But one last question for both of you. If you had to like shoehorn a Nashville SC player into one of these awards, who would you do for which award? Just try your hardest. This is not an actual take. Like this is like I'm like do your best argument for an NSC player to get in, and I'll think of one too. But I don't know if you guys have one.
Um,
Ooh, man, putting us on the spot here. Now I'm like
Yeah,
trying
sorry,
to
I didn't put
think.
that on
yeah,
there.
you really put us on the spot.
I think I can make an argument. I just gotta do a little bit of thinking here.
I
I am
think
trying to make an argument for. I mean, I possibly Jonathan Gomez as Young Player of the Year. That's a loanee from from
that
another
is
team.
that is a
Jonathan Perez,
strong
you
take.
mean?
Was that
Jonathan Perez. You
Jonathan Perez.
mean?
Jonathan Perez?
Sorry, not Gomez. Sorry, Jonathan Perez.
Uh,
Um, I think I can make an argument for Walker Zimmerman Defender of the Year simply because of how miserable Nashville is without him. But that's really it. I think I'm out. Other than that, I don't think I have anything.
What is
yeah,
the
I
what is the severe injury or adversity? I mean, like Alex
Don't
Muillo
say it.
being put on
Don't
the
say it.
bench for a lot last
No.
year, and then no, I wasn't gonna say Randall Leal, I'm not a monster.
Okay. Okay. I thought you were gonna say that's literally what I was like. Don't do that. That's not. That's
Um, yeah, that one's. I mean, Gary Smith for Coach of the Year, judging by how bad they've been ever since he left. Like, uh, the only other one that I could even think about would be, I guess this is also another jokey one. Never mind.
All right,
Never
we're just
mind.
gonna
Tava
Valer putting us.
Ananoga coming back and being an actual like regular player in the squad.
All right, Valer putting us on the spot here has turned this segment into a bunch of shenanigans. On the follow up, we're gonna come back. We got a little bit of international soccer to talk about. Plus, while we have the ability to, we're gonna be positive this season because there is positives that have happened throughout this season. And we're going to try, now that Clay's back after a 2 week hiatus, we want to try and be positive again. And we're going to do that next, right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer. And we are back right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer at Pharma Soccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And we also have a Patreon if you did not know. If you do sign up for the Patreon, we will mention you on the show. It's only $5 a month. It does help us keep the lights on for the show, helps us keep doing this all throughout the year, even during the off season, which I'm sure we will have a lot to talk about during the off season. So make sure you do subscribe to that Patreon. Would love to have you be a part of that. Also, pharmasoccer.com. Look, with this season and during the off season, we're going to have a lot to talk about with this team, and there's going to be a lot of it's going to be a lot of negative to talk about, and a lot of hard conversations and questions that we are going to have to ask of Nashville SC. While we're still in the MLS season, even though Nashville's MLS season is pretty much over, besides one match against Chicago on Saturday, for decision day. We wanted to kind of talk about the positives for Nashville SC this season, because I do think there are a couple that have been kind of, missed out on just based on the facts of the negatives that have happened throughout the season. So we wanted to take this time to be positive about the Nashville SC season. And I'm excited to hear what you guys have talk about. I have a couple things that have just kind of come up from a positive perspective, just thinking about the season. And I think the first things first is let's just kind of give a general, is there anything general, just specifically general positives? How I want to break this out is just a general positive, a specific favorite moment, and then a positive from a player. I know some of these might be tough specifically to narrow down. But is there just any sort of general positive topic that you kind of want to start off with for the season?
I'll start off really easy one. I think BJ Callahan is a positive. I think we might not have seen it this season, clearly with the results not being exactly what Nashville wanted them to be. But I do think overall that is a positive hire that's going to get better with time. That's going to get better with the preseason. That's going to get better with another transfer window. I think for BJ to be in Nashville to kind of show his to show who he is and to show his ideology and kind of give Nashville a new identity is going to take a while, no question about it. But the fact that that work is being done right now and not the faster you can get him involved, the better it is. And unfortunately for Nashville, that was the fastest they could get him involved. Now, if they are convinced that's their guy and this is the fastest they can get him, then I'm okay with it. It does unfortunately put this season in jeopardy as it did, but overall, I do think it's a positive move to have BJ Callahan be the Nashville SC head coach.
So mine is related to that, but certainly more abstract. I think the jury's probably still out on Callahan, so we'll see what happens there. But generally speaking, from a positive standpoint, I want to say that the idea to shake things up is probably a long-term positive thing. Um, the last several years, they've been able to point to sustained success as a reason to not shake things up. And even with that, they decided to move on in the middle of the season, which is something that they hadn't done before. They brought in, it's a second straight year where they brought in a sort of major signing mid-year who came in and played immediately. That's a positive sign. And honestly, I think that the this hasn't been positive for Nashville SC, but I think it's long-term positive for the soccer culture in Nashville that people openly, question and talk about things on a more sophisticated tactical level than they have in years past. And the downside for that for NSC is that can result in fewer people going to games because they don't want to watch a team play poorly. So that's not positive for NSC, but I think it's positive for the soccer culture in Nashville as a whole, that people are understanding the game more and understanding what to take issue with. Now, I don't agree with everyone who takes it. There are people who take issue with every single thing that has ever happened at Geodis Park and Nissan, like at First Tennessee Park. Like I'm seeing more nuanced critiques and things like that this year than I'd seen in previous years. And I think that that's overall a positive thing for this fan base, even though we still see some nonsense out there from time to time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think actually, my kind of just general topic positive both is influenced by Valair and BJ Callahan and trying to shake things up. This is the first season that we've seen Nashville SC actually move in a positive direction when it comes to youth being played and both in the academy itself, I would say. Signing a U22 initiative player like Yazbek, signing somebody like Jonathan Perez on loan, who he should be signing, as well as seeing some of the players in Huntsville actually getting meaningful minutes. Forza Jago being one of them. Seeing Julian Gaines as well being a part of these matches. This is the first time that we're not necessarily focused. It seems like we haven't been fully focused on hey, we're not even going to worry about youth, we're not even going to worry about saving minutes for people. This season it does seem like there was a little bit more particular interest in trying to make that happen. I do think there is more that could be done, but I think Nashville is trending in the right direction in accepting more of that with BJ Callahan and trying to shake things up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Callahan was a sign if they were really interested in him coming from where he comes from with Philadelphia that they wanted to do it. I will say this, it's sort of natural that there would be more of a focus this year. Like youth players started play. I mean, there were some younger players that played under Gary that we wouldn't have seen happen in the past as well this year. And that's because the academy is now at a point they started at U14, I believe, was the first team, and then they just have brought that group up year over year. And so now we're starting to see a couple players pop up, and they're starting to use it as a place to maybe bleed some international guys and see if they're going to be worthy to bring up to the team, like a Wubens Passius. So, like, it's an interesting thing that we've started to see this year. I think we'll see more of it next year, but I think that this has been in the works for a couple of years. I think this has been the long-term plan to kind of bleed these guys and bring them up eventually. But it is nice to actually see it happen after talking about it for several years.
And I've said this before, but it's a lot easier to integrate younger guys when your team is terrible. And that's as as blunt as I can put it. I mean, when you're fighting for a playing spot, as your biggest reward of the season is not like when you're fighting for home field advantage or when you're fighting for the supporter shield. And when you're fighting for those higher end sort of titles, you're less likely to use youth players because you want players who can win you the game rather than see what they have. And both with Ruma Montali and BJ Callahan, I think the idea was clear that yes, it would be nice to make the playoffs, but the risk just wasn't a whole lot to put in Julian Gaines for a few minutes or whatever it may be, right? Like what you're risking isn't going to be detrimental to the club, and that's something that is a silver lining rather than just a positive out of everything that's kind of going on around it.
All right. Just that was kind of general. Is there a specific favorite moment or match that you have when it comes to this season itself?
Why don't you start, Stephen? Do you have one?
I have a different one. I have like a different one than like the easy one. The easy one obviously is Champions League for me. Being able to go to the Dominican with Valair to see it's been something I've been waiting for since even USL was announced when it came to seeing this team in a Champions League match. Going over, just going abroad to go see the team will always be a magical moment in time for me. I didn't think I was going to be able to have the chance to do it, and I was able to at the end of the day, and it was a blast, and it was an amazing time. You wish the season would have been kicked off even that would have been a great kickoff for the season, for the rest of the season. Unfortunately, it wasn't. But I'll just start with that one as being my favorite. I do have another one, but I think one of you two might bring it up, so I'll let you go next, Flair.
Um, Clay, do you have something? I'm still thinking.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it sounds weird because hardly anybody was there, but watching Nashville play a home game in the Champions Cup, I suppose I'm still calling it Champions League, was really fun for me because I'm someone who's I've been watching MLS longer than everyone on this show. And so I remember watching Champions League games on Fox Soccer 2, 20 years ago. And so it was cool to actually have that in the city that I call home. But honestly, I think back to September and the 1-0 win over Chicago. Uh, it had been such a long time since Nashville had gotten a win, and there wasn't a ton of people in the stands, but the sort of release of actually winning a game and actually being able to celebrate with people and having something fun happen for once, which we haven't had anything fun happen around NSC in such a long time at that point, was really, really cool for me. And as people know, I've had a pretty long year outside of soccer. So to have like an actual like unifying like win and feeling that the playoffs were still alive, all this stuff was really, really cool for me. So that's easily, in the second half of the season after everything happened, that's easily the best moment.
I will say my moment, I guess, is the best moment I remember, other than the ones mentioned already. Anibal Godoy scoring a bicycle kick was pretty cool. Uh, and he dedicated it to an old Panamanian player who that was kind of his signature move, who unfortunately passed away. And we got to speak to Anibal Godoy after that, and he was just, I think that's the happiest I've seen Anibal Godoy ever, and he's a pretty like positive guy and pretty happy generally. So seeing him kind of perk up and be excited about his goal and his contribution, I think that's, in terms of good things I remember from this season, that's probably up there. And yeah, I probably have to go back and I'm forgetting something for sure, but the fact that we're kind of struggling to find good moments, I think tells you everything you need to know about this season.
For a similar reason, the away game in Atlanta, that actually
Yeah,
ended the streak, but less people were there, so Chicago felt like the more
but
big
you were
streak to
there,
me.
Clay.
Yeah,
That's true. Yeah.
yeah. Steven wasn't. That was the important part.
That
Yeah.
was unfortunate. Yeah, I mean that's why I know both of you were there. So if I was there, it would have been a draw. So good thing I didn't go. Um, is there is there a player on this roster that had a positive season
Yes.
in your guys's mind? And if you could pick one that was just like, you know what, this player did have a positive season, um, what player would you pick specifically for that?
I think the easiest and best answer is Sam Surridge. I mean, really, really good season in terms of relatively really, really good season. I think if this season showed anything, is that he is able to be that guy in MLS and able to be that guy for Nashville SC. Um, he has some low moments, obviously, and I think that just kind of goes off with what the team has. But if I had to pick one guy with the most positive to take from this year, I think Sam Sturridge would be my pick.
Yeah, I mean it's going away. It's funny because you grade it on a curve, right? Like if Sam Surge has this exact season next year, it's a failure.
Right.
Right, right.
Like so, he's shown that he can play at this level. Now it's about taking the next step in a different system and seeing what he can do. But like on the basis of year over year improvement, like Sam Surge is absolutely, he looks like a DP striker in MLS and he looks like he can do a whole lot more. And so he's the one that you point to. I jokingly said this, the last segment. I do feel like, you know, I feel like I see more of a player in Brian Anunga than I had seen in the last couple of years. I think he fits a little bit better. I don't think he's ever going to be a starting caliber MLS player. Um, but I think like if you would have told us before the season, is he going to be on the roster going into next year? I think we all would have, said hope not, or probably not, or something along those lines. I think he has established that he has a little bit more dimension to his game than we probably gave him credit for over the last 2 years. But I still think the fact that I'm bringing him up tells you how many players had bad seasons.
Right.
So like, but I think he'll probably, find a spot and will probably still be a professional soccer player for a few years, which I'm not sure I would have said last year. And so that's kind of sadly, that's kind of it. I mean, I think Ajago's a really interesting guy. I think that there's a version of next year where he's a really important, good player. I don't know that it's a given. I think that he feasted on using athleticism and size in situations that may not translate long term.
I
Um,
have one more, but Steven, you go and then I'll go again.
yeah, I have one more too. Like, I don't necessarily think he's going to be an integral part of our season next season whatsoever, but I do believe when it comes to just terms of improvement and working, and I brought it up in the first segment a little bit, like this, like Alex Mobile was an absolute bench player at the beginning of this, at the end of last season, beginning of this season. It seemed like he was kind of just off of Gary Smith's radar. It came a little bit, but Alex Mobile has absolutely, like, I don't know, one of the players that I could say has actually put in the work this year, and it seems like has put in a massive amount of effort this year to try and improve as a player. Is there still some things that he should work on? Yes, absolutely. Do I believe that he's going to be an integral part of this Nashville SC attack or what? No, I don't necessarily think so. But I do believe when it comes to just improvements and players having a positive year, I definitely think Alex Mouille has definitely lived up to that, and just in terms of his play in general and working for his starting spot that he had throughout the season.
Yes, that was actually going to be who I was going to say. So glad we agree there. But I think
This has
again,
been a strong pro wheel podcast for years at this point.
yeah, and
Has
I
it?
think like Clay said, I mean, I am pretty pro Muil. I think just because of how just versatile he is. But he does this every year, guys. Every year we say the same thing for Alex Muil. Since he came to NSC second half of 2020 until today, we say, oh, next year they're going to use him less, and he's just going to be this kind of guy who kind of comes in and fills in the gaps. And then he comes into the season, and we look at it. Oh, he started 26 games, played 33 games, over 2,000 minutes. Every single year, we say the same thing. He does the same thing. He is absolutely valuable to this team. And no, it's not in goal scoring, even though he has 4 goals, which is the third most in MLS for this team.
Jesus
Yes,
Christ.
yes, just so we're clear of where we are.
He typically has better stats than Schaffelberg, who has a completely different reputation among this fan base, which I always find
Exactly.
interesting.
Exactly. And Schaffelberg has played, to be fair, like 1,000 fewer minutes, but Schaffelberg doesn't play in midfield, doesn't play at right back, which Alex Muyl does. So I'm not gonna just sit here and say like, oh, Alex Muyl is like the answer to the future, like Steven said, but I do think he's a valuable member of this team, and I think he gets a lot more flack than he deserves.
So was it a tough year for Nashville SC? Yes, absolutely. But were we, as a podcast, as a pharmacy, able to bring out the positives that did happen this year? Yes, we were able to. And I'm glad we got to do this because of the fact that the next few weeks slash months are going to be very hard in conversation when it comes to offseason moves, what this team should do, et cetera, et cetera.
And the last bit I'll say is that I think this will be the biggest change we'll see from an offseason perspective for Nashville SC. I really think they're going to go through a lot of changes. And that 2020 core has already begun to shrink, and it will continue to shrink throughout as we go through this another window in the winter here.
And with that, we did have an international break where there were a few Nashville SC players involved in that international break. Three specifically. One of them I didn't wake up for the match, but two of them I saw. So, Valer, do you kind of want to just give a rundown really quick of the internationals?
Yeah, Anibal Godoy played against the U.S. in a match. Panama lost 2-0. I think he came on in the 70th minute as a substitute and played the remainder of the game. Jacob Schaffelberg hasn't played yet, but will be playing on Tuesday against Panama, against Anibal Godoy. So there's a chance Godoy versus Schaffelberg there. And then Patrick Yazbek was an unused substitute in Australia's win against a team I don't remember right now on Thursday. And then next up, they have Japan coming up on Tuesday morning as well. And that's going to be a big, big, big game for Australia. And if he didn't come off the bench for that first game, then I don't think he will be coming off the bench against Japan unless something. It was China. Okay, Australia beat China. And for those of you not familiar with the Asian qualification, Australia has been playing in Asia to qualify since 2004. And the reason for that is because Oceania, the continent Australia belongs to, is just at a way, way lower level. And Australia was just taking all the seats and taking everything for the World Cup. So Australia decided to move to kind of challenge themselves. And also, I think FIFA was like, okay, we got to give these other teams a chance. And that's why Australia is in Asia. Geographically, they are not in Asia. We're sticking with that. But yeah, so we'll see if Yazbek gets any minutes against Japan. But I would be pretty sure that both Godoy and Schaffelberg would play in that match on Tuesday.
Yeah, and as Valer talked about, the U.S. men's national team did play on Saturday. It was fun. It was Pochettino's first match for the U.S. men's national team. I think it was a lot of fun to watch just because you definitely see the differences, easily the differences between Pochettino's system and Berhalter's system. It was kind of the same thing that you saw with BJ Callahan coming into this Nashville team, where you were going to see differences in the way the team played. And I thought the Pochettino era started off in a very good light for the U.S. men's national team. I'm excited to see what happens. A lot of players are not playing on Tuesday against Mexico, including Pulisic. So there might be a chance for some of these newer, younger players to come into this Pochettino system and see. So if you're not watching anything on Tuesday, go check that out. But I thought it was fun to watch, except it was late on Saturday night. But yeah, it was good. So definitely going to be better than watching Nashville against Chicago this Saturday. That's for sure. I haven't necessarily looked at the decision day schedule, but is there a possibility that there is a worse match than Nashville Chicago?
I highly doubt it. I think all the other ones have a little bit to play for, at least one of the sides, of course. Um, whether it's seeding or just pure entertainment or players chasing certain records or whatever. I will say that the two things to watch. I'll give two reasons to watch this if you're a Nashville fan. And the first reason is just to see what BJ Callahan does with the lineup, because you might see guys like Julian Gaines and Ajago and other guys who haven't been featured as much for Nashville SC. But I think the main motivation for Nashville SC here in this match, which honestly is a little sad that is the main motivation going into the match, but it is going to be the Hani Mukhtar is chasing a record that no one else in MLS has been able to do, which is 10 goals and 10 assists, at least 10 goals, 10 assists in 4 consecutive MLS seasons. No one has ever done that. Hani Mukhtar is currently 2 goals away from that. If he scores twice against Chicago, he becomes the first ever MLS player to do that. Again, it's 10 goals and at least 10 goals, 10 assists in 4 consecutive seasons, which just shows you how much he's carried this team, I think. But if I'm finding talking points from the national perspective to watch this match, it's probably just those two, involvement of the youth and Hani Mukhtar's record.
Yeah, I don't have anything other than that. Cool. Clay, anything else?
I hope they beat Chicago because that'd be cool.
Cool. Awesome. Well,
Oh
let's
yeah, and watch the rest of Decision Day. It's gonna be a lot more fun.
yeah, a lot of stuff, a lot of West Coast, like Western Conference matches that look extremely entertaining. Like Seattle Portland on decision day is insane to me. And I think Portland did Portland clinch or are they
Everybody's clinched in the West and the East, but it's all sorry, the East. Everybody's clinched on the West. It's just the seeding, and then the East. There's an outside chance for Philadelphia and Atlanta to get in if certain results go their way.
Gotcha. Well, let's let's do the plugs and predictions. Clay, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so I got a couple things to talk about. First off, check out National Soccer Archive. There was a story written up about the National Soccer Archive and what we do and the collection at Vanderbilt that was written in CityCast Nashville last week. So shout out to them. They did a story on Valer. They did a podcast with Valer earlier this season. Some sad soccer news locally. Mike Purcell, who was a longtime coach at Brentwood, he retired for health reasons over the summer. He won 5 state titles there. He passed away over the weekend. My connection to that is his brother Jimmy runs the school where my wife works. But he was a pretty important part of the early days of Nashville soccer back in the day, playing for, I think it was called Nashville Celtic in the Dixie State League or the Dixie Amateur League, whatever it was called. So just they're looking for some help with some funeral expenses and things like that. As we know, things can get quite expensive. And I put the link on my Twitter page. So if you can go dig that out and send a couple bucks their way, I know it would be appreciated. As far as I guess follow me at Clay Lassol on Twitter and Instagram. As far as predictions, we're going to go 2-0 Nashville. Honey gets both goals. There's one thing that we know about Honey more than we know about any other player in NSC, and that's exactly how much they care about statistical milestones and things that can entrench their legacy. And that is something that's very important to Honey, which sometimes works against him, but often works in his favor, or works in Nashville SC's favor. So that's what I'm going with.
Blair.
Yeah, and there are still like bonuses and stuff. So too, like every minute, every goal, every assist counts with your pocket, and those things are important for everyone and the players obviously playing. I will say Nashville SC will win 3-1, 3-2. Let's do it 3-2. In an thrilling, exciting, most exciting match of the season, probably. And Hani Mukhtar will get his record because why not? I'll predict it. And I think Schaffelberg gets a goal as well, coming back from international duty, where he does score again for Canada against Panama. Why am I predicting extra stuff? I don't know. Anyway, follow me at Valeria Villa on Twitter, Threads, and Instagram. I obviously have Nashville coverage. I think I will have some league coverage as the playoffs start and Nashville aren't included. So yeah, make sure to follow me and support my work because I need that and I like that when you do it. So at Valeria Villa.
Yeah, go support both what Clay and Blair brought up in their plugs. Yeah, that's the most necessary support Blair's work. And then of course some local soccer stuff. Yeah, absolutely go support his funeral expenses. That'd be great. I don't really have anything at PH Steven HD, but this is, of course, my last prediction of the season for Nashville SC. So with that being said, I got to make it as wild as this match should be. So I am predicting a 6-5 Nashville win coming into the season. I think Hani Mukhtar goes one above. It gets a hat trick. I think Julian Gaines gets his first goal ever. And then shout out Todd Ryan Anuga, who gets a brace
Yes.
as
Yes.
well.
It's been a very
Yes.
pro
This is
Brian
well.
Munga podcast today.
Yeah, so that would be, and then it'll be who's the dude that Gutman scores all 5 goals for Chicago. Thank you
I think
again
he's
so
injured.
much. Huh?
I think he's injured, but go off, King.
Why do you, yeah, you just got to step
As
all
if that affects the realisticness of his
Yeah.
Thank you all so much again for listening to the show, sticking through us for this MLS season. We definitely appreciate it. We'll be back next week, I'm sure, to kind of maybe talk about that Nashville-Chicago match. If not, we'll still be here to talk about our weekends and all of the other things that are going on in the world of soccer. Thank you so much again for listening. We appreciate it, and we hope you have a good rest of your week.